Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dolly Madison. I was married to the fourth President of the United States, James Madison. I am happy to be here today. I have always loved parties and large gatherings. James and I hosted many wonderful people in our day. When I was thinking about my visit today, I decided I would try to concentrate on things that we might have in common or facts that you might be interested in. Now, I know you're here to raise funds for Father Joe Carroll's village, for the homeless children associated with the village. When I was here, I helped raise funds for the Catholic Church's orphanage for young girls. I'm so proud to know that people still continue to take care of those less fortunate, especially the homeless children. When I was out front today, I noticed a woman had a thing, she called it a cell phone. She told me a little bit about telephones and the internet. I must admit, I cannot bend my mind around these concepts. But I can tell you that I was there the very first time a public message was sent by wire. My good friend, the artist and inventor, Samuel Morse, invited me to a small gathering of people when the first message was sent from Baltimore, Maryland to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The message said, "What hath God wrought?" What has God brought? I don't know how you feel about your communication system, but we were so happy to think we could send a message so quickly from one place to the other. I was present at a lot of firsts. I was there and helped raise funds for. I was there the day they laid the cornerstone for the George Washington's monument. There was a lot of exciting things that happened in our country back when it first started. In my short conversations with some of you today, I do believe people haven't changed all that much. Although technology has advanced beyond my understanding, I think that our feelings and emotions are rooted in the same human spirit. Today I heard some of you talking about the First Lady. Well, when I was here, I was called the Presidentress. The term First Lady was coined actually at my passing, at my funeral. I'm glad to know that the name First Lady has stayed ever since then. I also heard someone say you have a black president and a black First Lady. I must admit I cannot bend my mind around this concept either, although I was always for the advancement of all people from all places of all races. Just a little bit about my background. I was raised on a very successful plantation that was owned by my parents. We had a lot of slaves. We were Quakers. We wore plain gray dresses down to the ankle, white kerchiefs around our necks, and white bonnets. We were not allowed to wear anything fancy, no jewelry. But my grandmother was not a Quaker, and she gave me the most beautiful gold pin. I loved it, but I couldn't wear it. But being a child, I was very creative. So I stuck the little gold pin in a little pouch, put it on a string, and tied it around my neck and wore it under my kerchief. Oh, I loved that pin. But I remember the day that I lost it. I was so upset. I was crying uncontrollably. When Mother Amy was my black nurse. She helped raise me. I loved her. She said to me, "Now, Dolly, don't worry, honey. One day you'll have lots and lots of gold jewelry and beautiful dresses." Well, shortly after that, we had to sell our beautiful home plantation because the state of North Carolina decided that we had to free our slaves. And we were happy to free our slaves, but could not run or afford to run the plantation by ourselves. So my father sold it, and we were going to move to Philadelphia. Now, I was only 14, so I was kind of scared to leave, yet I was excited to move to a big city. Well, Philadelphia was very exciting at the time. They had a thing going on called the Continental Congress. They were writing the Constitution of the United States. It was no big deal to see people like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson walking down the streets. Oh, I had a very busy life. I was invited to lots of parties. I had lots of friends. And I was asked to be married many times. I turned down all of those requests. But after dating and courting John Todd for 3 years, I decided it would be okay to get married. And it was a good decision. He was a very kind and gentle soul. We had a full life. We lived in Philadelphia. He was a lawyer. We had 2 beautiful sons when the most devastating thing happened. The yellow fever swept across Philadelphia. It killed thousands of people. including my husband John and our 3-month-old son. Well, shortly after John died, I came down with yellow fever as well, but I was one of the fortunate ones who lived to talk about it. I have always had that I must keep going spirit, and that's what I did. I kept going. I restarted my life in Philadelphia, and the city rebuilt itself as well. The spirit of America was rejuvenated in Philadelphia. Well, I restarted my life with my son, and I still had lots of friends in politics. One of my more controversial friends was Aaron Burr. Now, Aaron Burr, I don't know if you remember, but Aaron Burr, when he was Vice President of the United States, challenged Alexander Hamilton to a duel, and he shot him to death. It was quite a scandal at the time. I hope your politicians don't resort to duels to this day. Well, one thing good about Aaron Burr was he set me up with my first meeting with my husband-to-be, James Madison. Now, I knew James was 17 years older than me, but when Aaron asked me if I wanted to meet him, well, of course, I said, yes, of course I would love to meet him. I mean, he was the father of the Constitution. He was already given credit for that. He had written many of the Federalist Papers, and he was working on the Bill of Rights. Well, naturally, I wanted to meet him. I must admit, it was love at first sight. And after a short courtship, we were married in grand fashion. No more gray dresses for me. From that day forward, I was considered a lady of fashion. Well, we started our life in Montpelier when my husband's good friend, Thomas Jefferson, became the 3rd President of the United States, and he asked my husband James if, actually he appointed him to be Secretary of State. So we moved to Washington, D.C. We supported the President in everything he did, and my husband was very much of a big helper for the Louisiana Purchase. The widowed president asked me if I would become the nation's official hostess. At that time, I was given the name Presidentress, and it stayed with me. I helped host a lot of parties for the president. One I remember in particular was we hosted a party for Captain Meriwether Lewis and Captain William Clark, just before they went off on their expedition to explore and map the land between the Mississippi River and the Pacific Ocean. It was quite a party. Now, I seemed to acquire a good reputation. People seemed to like what I did. And it was good because I got lots of practice for when my husband James became the 4th President of the United States in 1809. Now, we decided to have a big party after the inauguration, and it was the first inaugural ball ever held in the United States. When we went to move into the President's house, it was a big, empty structure. The President had taken his furniture home with him, and I thought, the President's house should not belong to the President, but should belong to the people of the United States. The Congress agreed and gave us funds, and I had a wonderful time decorating the President's house. My most favorite decoration was the portrait of George Washington, which we hung in the dining room. Well, I guess people really liked what I did because it was written in many papers at the time. People seemed to copy what I did. I guess the proof was in the ice cream. I'm imagining you all eat ice cream. Ice cream was actually introduced to the United States by the Quakers, and I served it the first time at the inaugural ball. People loved it. I think they still love it. In fact, I think there's still a Dolly Madison ice cream business that exists today. You might look that up on your internet. I guess you know the English were never happy about giving up this country over here. And in 1812, they started more conflicts. Most of the conflicts were on the border of the Canadian border and the United States. But in 1814, they landed with their ships, and a huge force of men landed at the mouth of the Potomac River. They had nothing to fear. We did not have the troops to stop them, and they marched right on the city of Washington, D.C., and they burned everything in sight. They burned the Capitol building, they burned the Library of Congress, and I know they were coming to burn the President's house. James, of course, had to go and lead the armies, the military, and left me in charge of the house. And he said, Dolly, whatever you do, save the papers from the Continental Congress. So as soon as he left, we packed up all those papers and some of our cherished possessions and sent them off into the woods. Hours went by and didn't hear anything from James, and then you could hear the cannons in the background. I went up on the roof and I could see smoke in the distance. I knew it wouldn't be long. I came downstairs as a courier arrived to tell me that it was said that I should leave the house, that it would be only a couple of hours when the British came. And I thought, oh, I need to save that picture of George Washington. So I had my helpers take it down. They had an awfully hard time because the frame was nailed to the wall. I said, break the frame. And they did, just in time, get the portrait of Washington and save it. And then I ran into the woods with my assistant, dressed like a peasant. I was out there for a couple of days when the most amazing thing happened. I think you'd call it divine intervention. A big hurricane swept across Washington, D.C. It put out the fires. It also did damage to a lot of roofs and things itself. But the best thing it did was it exhausted the British. They were wet, cold, tired, and hungry, and they marched themselves back to their ships, and they floated away. We signed a treaty with England in 1815, and that was the end of the English-American conflict. Now the city started to be rebuilt under my husband, James's, guidance. But after 8 years as president and our leadership in public office, we were happy to return to our home in Mount Pelier. And for the next 21 years, we enjoyed our lives together. When we left Washington, I was 49 and James was 66. But the next 21 years, we hosted many friends and many political people. We had a really fine life. My husband enjoyed himself until he died at the age of 87 in 1839. Well, I couldn't run that house by myself, so I moved back to Washington, D.C., where I stayed very busy till I was 81 years old. It was quite exciting. There was still a lot to do. I was very happy when the United States Congress honored me with an honorary seat in the House of Congress. And I am honored to be here with you today to reminisce and share some of my stories with you. In closing, I would like to say, God bless Father Joe Carroll's Village for all the good work it does to help those less fortunate. God bless this Ladies Auxiliary for all the funds that you've raised to help Father Joe Carroll's Village. But mostly, God bless America. Thank you for your attention.